So the Bible reading is from Book of Matthew, chapter 25, and I'm starting reading from verse 14. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went away at once, put his money to work, and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. And the man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. And his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things, and I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. And then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here it is what belongs to you. And his master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed? Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside. Into the darkness there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you. My name is Andy, as Dave said, and I'll just echo his welcome, particularly if you are here for the first time. I'm very excited because I have just dropped my kids off in the kids' work, and Beth has gone, my wife has gone to Birmingham. She left on Friday, so this is the first 20 minutes I've had to myself in what feels like a long time. So how about we just have a group nap? Should we? No? All right, I'll preach then. I actually remembered the other day, just back in 2015, before I became a dad, I was about to become a dad. It was a few months away. And I thought I better do some research because I don't feel like I have a clue what's about to hit me. And someone gave me this book called 60-Minute Father. I don't know if any of the dads out there were also given a copy of this book, but it's still in circulation. It's been there for a long time, I think. And it's just this guy, Rob Parsons, talking about how to be a dad and what you want to look out for and stuff. It's really helpful. And there was this one particular story that stayed with me ever since I read it, which was him talking about how every morning, he said his son would come into the bathroom when he was having his morning shave, and he would say, oh, Dad, tell me a story. So his dad every morning would make up a story whilst he was shaving about ninjas and cowboys and whatever else, and how the two of them together would defeat the baddies. And he said he did that every single morning, and then one morning he just didn't turn up. And he said his son didn't send him an email like a week in advance saying, hey, Dad, just FYI, you've only got 1 week of stories left, so kind of make the most of them. One morning just didn't come. And Rob Parsons said that that particular door of his childhood just closed. And what he was saying in the point he was trying to make is that it's what many parents have said to me over the years. It goes quick. It doesn't feel like it's going quick some days, but it's that old saying about how the days are long but the years are short. And Rob Parsons was basically just saying, make the most of it. See the bigger picture, which is that before you know it, you're going to be chasing them around, saying, hey, can you give me some attention? They're not going to be taking your calls. And so he's saying, whilst they're in that particular phase of wanting so much from you, just be aware it goes fast. Now, Jesus, one of the things I'm loving about doing the parables is listening to him again as a storyteller. And his stories, they always have a point to them. And this particular story that we just had read to us, the context of it is that the disciples come to Jesus. This is towards the end of the gospel, Matthew's gospel, chapter 24. They come to him and they say, hey, tell us about the end of the age, the end times. And if you're new to church, this phrase, the end times, is this idea that we believe that Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, has returned to be with his Father, that he's present with us now through his Spirit, and that one day he will return to be with us again. And that when he comes back, that signals the end of this particular age and the beginning of the new heavens and the new earth. So the disciples gather around Jesus and they say, tell us about that. And Jesus gives a long talk. You can read it in Matthew 24 and 25. And as part of that particular talk, he tells them this story. And it's the one we just had read to us. A master gives bags of gold to servants, to one 5, to one 2, and to another 1 bag of gold. He goes away, and then he comes back. And when he comes back, the servants come to him and they say, hey, here's what we've done with the gold that you gave to us. And just like Rob Parsons is kind of trying to paint this big picture view of being a parent and saying, hey, look, this is how it goes. This is the perspective. You want to make sure you try and keep at the front of your mind every day so that then how you live each day is shaped by that bigger picture view. So Jesus is doing a similar thing with this particular story where he's trying to give us the sense of this is how life is, and not just life, but this is how the world is. And there's this truth in it that God has given to all of us bags of gold, as it were. And what that represents is he has given to us skills, gifts, opportunities. All of us have them, and we might not all have the same amount, but we all have them. And even the guy that gets given 1 bag of gold, like the monetary equivalent that Jesus was talking about, a 1 bag of gold was the equivalent of 15 to 20 years of a day laborer's wages. So we're still talking about £500,000. There's a lot. There's a lot there. So even the person who only has 1 is given a lot. And what Jesus is saying is that there will come a moment where we will stand before him, before the master, and we'll want to be able to say, hey, here's how I used it. Here's how I used all that you gave me. And the great reformer Martin Luther, one of the things that he used to say is that there are 2 days in my calendar, this day and that day. That day when I stand before him that's coming. That might not sound super practical, but actually as a way of framing the world that we're a part of and how we live is an incredibly helpful approach. And obviously as part of this story, there's a challenge here. I'm not going to major on the third servant, but Jesus is saying, look, there are some who have the bags of gold who then just bury it. They don't use it. And the third servant, he says, Master, verse 24, I knew that you were a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you had not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. And he claims it was because of fear. The master, however, sees through him and says, no, you're wicked and lazy. Hello, welcome to church. He says, you're wicked and lazy. And I think he's onto something, because this is the equivalent of, let's say you have a teenager and you say, look, I'm going to go away for a year and I'm going to leave you with 50K And what I want you to do with that 50 grand is I want you to invest it in the house and just make it a little bit better. And now imagine you come back 1 year later and the house, if anything, looks slightly worse than it was before you left. And you say, where's the 50 grand? And they say, oh, I just put it under the mattress. And then they go on to say, because I'm so scared of you. It's because I'm terrified of you. And I know what a harsh and hard parent you are. How would we respond like that? We'd say, well, if you were really scared of me, you would have at least spent some of it on something, right? You would have at least gone and bought a few pot plants. It's not because you're scared, it's because you couldn't be bothered. And there's this sense of indifference, apathy that Jesus is putting his finger on with this third servant. And obviously, we want to be cautious about ever going there. And it can be easy in a world where we're overstimulated to become numb to the needs of the world around us. We don't want to go there. We want to be mindful of the third servant in all of us. However, actually, for me, as I kind of spent time with this passage, the closest equivalent I could come up with for me in terms of how I felt like it was speaking and how I felt like it might be speaking to us as a church is the equivalent of like a halftime pep talk from a football manager when the team is doing pretty well. And, I've been watching this documentary that follows Wrexham Football Club. I don't know if you've seen that. But when the team is playing well, they go into the dressing room at half-time. The manager doesn't just sit there and say nothing to them. Even though they've been playing well, what he does is he gets them together and he says, you're doing great. You're executing the game plan. Well done. And he says, now you just keep going. 45 more minutes of playing like that, and victory is yours. You're going to be lifting the trophy. Promotion is just around the corner. You just keep doing it, and you keep playing that game. And honestly, one of the things that I think the Lord would say to us through this passage is, I think Jesus is saying, through the first servant and the second servant, a life that pleases God is possible. It's doable. More than that, it is within your grasp. And he's not talking about earning salvation. We know that that is a gift to us. He's not talking about that, but he's talking about the way in which we choose to live our lives, the decisions that we choose to make, and how we spend those opportunities that God gives to us. He's saying it's possible to live a life where at the end of it, he says, well done. At the end of it, it's like, as it were, you win. And the way that we do that, in essence, at its heart, is incredibly simple and incredibly hard. And the way in which we do it is we take what he has given to us, and we can relax because we don't need to invest what he's given to other people. We don't need to play the game of comparison and say, well, if I was really gifted, then I'd really be able to make a difference. We just take what he's given to us, the things he's put into our week, our day, and then we, as it were, choose to have an attitude of giving it back to him. Choose to live for his purposes and for his plans and according to his agenda with all that we do. And that's one of the reasons why, as a church, it's great that we regularly, and this is the first Pray Serve Give I've been to, so I'm really excited for it, but that we regularly come back to, where are we going? Let's just check ourselves. Are we investing that which he has given to us according to what we know he's called us to do? It's an opportunity for all of us, as part of P's and G's, those who would call this church home, to ask ourselves, how are we making a contribution? How are we going to play our part? The value of the teams, the value of the finance table at the back, what all of that allows us to do is to take those things that we care about, those intentions that we have, and earth them and make it practical. That if we care about seeing people worship God, it's a great opportunity to sign up to play a role in seeing that take place. That if we care about feeding those in our city who don't have anywhere else to go, that we can put 12 Saturdays or wherever it happens to be in a year and put some flesh on that we would commit to being there. Whatever it happens to be, it's a chance for us collectively, together as a family and as a body, because this is much more like a bring and share than it is going to a restaurant. It's a chance for all of us to bring what we have and put it to work for what he has called us together collectively to do. That's why we do it. At the same time, I love this story because it's so much bigger than P's and G's. And it's so much bigger than what we happen to bring in the however many years we're part of this particular local community. Because this for us is a map for how we want to live, wherever we are. And most of our investing of our gifts and our talents, as absolutely crucial as all of these things are, most of our investing of our talents is going to be what we do when we're at work, what we do when we're at home, when we're running our lives. These things serve such a phenomenal role in allowing us to outwork collectively together, but we've also got that at the back of our minds. And what these things allow us to do is it's not either or. It's like two pedals on a bike. They work together to mean we move forward as a family and as a unit. And for me, I have been challenged as I've read this again to ask myself the question, am I living with the end in mind? Because I don't know about you, but I find it so easy to drift and to lose my focus and to get caught up in the busyness. So, as we do this, the two servants, one of them makes 5 bags, one of them makes 2. And they both, when they get to stand before the master, even though there's a considerable difference between 10 bags and 4 bags, get exactly the same response from him. He says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many. Come and share in your master's happiness." It sounds pretty easy, the way they say it. Hey, you gave me 5 bags, here's 5 more. You gave me 2, doubled it. It sounds straightforward, right? But anyone who's ever read the New Testament can see the way in which the disciples, in the end, invest their bags of gold, so to speak. The way that the church in the book of Acts seizes its opportunities. It's rarely simple and straightforward. It's always hard. Always. And it always involves back and forth and 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And it's tiring. And after a while, it must have taken a toll on them. And I imagine that there are some of us here who we've been following Jesus for a number of years now, and it feels hard. And I've actually chatted with people in the last week who've told me of some of the things that they're wrestling with in their own vocation, in their own workplace. And it's a battle for some of them to show up at the moment. There are people who are difficult. There are people who are causing problems. There are some who've been slogging away, investing their bags of gold, so to speak, their skills and their gifts for years and have not made the kind of impact that they were always hoping they would make. And after time, it can become easy to be disillusioned and to grow a little bit jaded and a little bit cynical. And for some of us, it can be tempting at points to want to give up. And so this is Jesus saying to us, hey, at halftime, as it were, keep going and keep investing and keep doing it for the King, keep doing it for the Master, keep living with the end in mind. I know the days feel long, but trust me, the years are short. If you do this, what will happen is victory is yours. And one day you will have, here's what's ahead of you. One of the things that's ahead of us is this. Well done. Well done. And there's nothing wrong with a bit of self-belief, but at the same time, all of us need more than that. I try and give myself a pep talk some days. I look in the mirror, I say, Andy, you're incredible. You're fantastic. Your kids are lucky to have you, right? I try that. I honestly don't believe it. I don't believe a word of it because I know me and I know what I'm like. So it's great to try that. I'm not saying, positive speaking is probably better than negative, but at the same time, we need something more. We need someone external to speak over us. And I don't know if you've ever had it where you are having a hard week. Let's say you're a teacher, and it's really tough. And then there's one of the teachers at school who's been there since the dinosaurs and is like this veteran and is respected and admired by everybody. And let's say they just pull you to one side, this grizzled veteran of a teacher, and they say to you, hey, whatever it takes to make a phenomenal teacher, I just want you to know you've got it. When something like that happens, someone we admire says something to us, that makes such a difference, doesn't it? And what we're talking about here is our Father taking us by the hand, so to speak, looking us in the eye and saying, great job. Great job. You smashed it. You didn't get it right every week. I wasn't expecting you to. You needed me every step of the way. That was always going to be the case. But my goodness, you went for it. You tried your best to give your best for the King. Well done. That's what's ahead of us. Second thing that's ahead of us, and this is an interesting one, many things. You've been faithful with a few things. Now I'm going to put you in charge of many things. I mean, this is a real insight into how loaded the master is, because he gives them the equivalent of millions and millions of pounds. And he says, you've been faithful with just a few things, just 5 million. I'm going to give you a lot. And there's a mystery to this, but part of the mystery of it is that God promises us, and I don't understand how this is going to work, but he promises us, as it were, more responsibility in the next life. That's a really interesting thing to consider and to sit with. I read a book about becoming an adult a little while ago, because I thought it's probably about time I did that. And one of the things that this guy was saying is one of the challenges, the temptations of becoming a grown-up, proper grown-up, is that you end up with responsibilities. And all these people who rely on you and need you and look to you. And he's saying, be mindful that when you are the person that a lot of others lean on, it's very easy to become resentful of that. Oh, they always need me. It's always me. I'm always having to do it. I'm the one that pays the bills. I'm the one that does this. I'm the one that does that. And he says, just be aware that usually people realize when those responsibilities are taken away, what a privilege it really was. And that there is something worse than having too much to do. And that's having nothing to do that really matters. And so this idea of being given more, one of the things it says to me is that we can think, I serve the Lord now, and then maybe at some point I'll get to retire a little bit and have a proper break, and that's me done. Right? And most of my responsibilities are in the past. Most of my responsibilities are in the rearview mirror. And I don't know if this is good news for you or if this is a terrible thing for me to say to you if you've just entered retirement. Most of your responsibilities are ahead of you. This is like a little sabbatical, and I hope it's a nice one, because ahead are many things. Many things. And what we'll find is when we discover those things and we're given to them, there is not an ounce of regret in us as we take on the privilege of continuing to serve our Father. There are many things ahead. And here's the final thing that's ahead. Come and share in your Master's happiness. Joy. Joy is ahead. And I remember coming across, and I finished with this, a story of a missionary couple, an old missionary couple who'd been working in Africa for years. And they finally hit the point where they couldn't do it anymore, and so they were traveling back to New York City, which is where they planned to retire. They had no pension. Their health was broken, and they, to be honest, were going back feeling pretty defeated, pretty discouraged, and pretty down and pretty afraid. And they happened to book on to the same ship as the President of the United States at the time, Teddy Roosevelt. And Roosevelt was returning from one of his big hunting expeditions that he'd been on in Africa. And they're there on this cruise ship, and they see the fanfare that surrounds the president and the entourage. And as the ship kind of moves across the ocean, the old missionary, the man, said to his wife, something's wrong, How is it that we have given our lives to faithful service of God, and frankly, nobody seems to care? And yet there's the president who's just been on a hunting trip, and everyone's making a massive fuss about him. How is that fair? And his wife says, you shouldn't feel that way. And he says, well, I do. Anyway, I can't help it. And then finally the ship docks in New York, and there's this massive kind of like welcome committee for the President of the United States. And of course, again, no one really knows that they're there. So the papers are full of the president gets back and things like that. And this missionary couple just slip off into New York, unnoticed by everybody. And they find themselves a little cheap flat on East Side. And they planned the next day to see what they could do to try and make a living and make ends meet in the city. And that particular evening, this man, his spirit is broken. And he says to his wife, I can't take this. God is not treating us fairly. And his wife replied, well, why don't you go into the bedroom and tell that to the Lord? Can you tell they've been married for a long time in the way that they interact with each other? Just go and tell God, all right? I've had it up to here with you. So go and tell him. So the man goes into the room, and she said he came out later, and his face was completely changed. And she said, what happened? What happened, dear? And he said, the Lord settled it with me. I told him how bitter I was that the president should receive this amazing homecoming, and when no one met us as we returned home. And when I finished, it was as though the Lord just put his hand on my shoulder, and he said to me the words, you're not home yet. And the truth is, ahead of all of us, as we seek imperfectly and in weakness to take what he's put into our hand and give it back to him, we have ahead of us a welcome the like of which will floor us when we get there. We will see not his servants, not his kind of like diplomats or whatever, but our Father himself. And he will say to us, well done. He'll say, hey, you've been faithful with those few things, and I know it's been hard, but you stuck at it. Well done. Here's some things that I think you'll be brilliant at. Play a role there. And then he'll say, come on into my joy. Welcome home. And so we're going to, in advance of that welcome, as we think about our own faithfulness, we're going to celebrate his. And so if the band want to come and be ready, why don't we stand together? I'll pray as we do. And Lord, we thank you that before we ever attempt to be faithful to you, we can trust that wherever we're at, however our week has been, whether we feel like the third servant who's messed it up a little bit this week, or just really tired versions of servant number 1 and number 2, we celebrate and rest on your faithfulness to us.